Larry Plank brings up a good point inside the huddle. Everybody banging on Jimmy Sexton this morning for negotiating Scottie Pippen's 1991 NBA deal, which was 7 years, $18 million.
I'm mad for Pippen.
Me too.
Like, I woke up and I'm like, man, we gotta get after them today. We're gonna get after Krause and company. Pippen needs to be paid.
I mean, even Jerry Reinsdorf, who was the owner of the Chicago Bulls, still is, at the time, stated on the documentary last night, I told Pippen when he signed it, this is not a good deal for you. You know, I mean, that's the Chicago Bulls on the other side of the negotiating table, but Jimmy Sexton was his agent at the time. Plank brings up a good point. He was just getting himself ready, as Plank writes in. Sexton was owning his craft. Now he gets Missouri's new head coach, who I have no idea what his name is, $4 million a year.
Shout out Drinkwitz. Yeah, man, look, everybody has to learn somewhere. I think it also bears mentioning, and as we talk about Krause, this is relevant to the entire story. This was a different time in the front office, right? When my old man held out along with Reggie White and all those guys, I think that was back in '89. That's what essentially created NFL free agency as we understand it today, right?
Yeah.
Player empowerment. And then in a sport like the NBA, we've completely seen it shift to the player side, where the players now arguably dictate even the more in the front office. When Krause and Reinsdorf were still operating then, their word was law, right? Like that was the old school, I don't care who you are, I'm not paying you. I'm getting it done as cheap as possible. Like, you heard Reinsdorf, he has no regret over what Pippen was paid. And he even acknowledged that it was a terrible deal. But then he also says, look, no, my opinion was you sign a contract, you're done. I don't want to see you again. You signed it. That's your fault. Yeah, I told you it was a bad deal. You still signed it. You got to deal with that now.
I also would say that looking back on it, Pippen would probably not be as proud as the way that he handled it. Even Michael Jordan was talking about that summer of '97 when he could have gotten the surgery.
Let's talk about that then, because I find myself kind of on Pippen's side a bit here.
I could go both ways on it. I mean, I see both ends of the spectrum, in the sense of that Pippen was getting back to the negotiating table at the end of the year. You know, he was going to be a high-prized free agent at the time, and really coming off of another championship run with him being a key catalyst there, I think would do him good at the negotiating table, and I think it would exert a sense of professionalism to the next team, whoever was to sign him, that you're getting a pro.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting a pro, but I also see that Scottie Pippen outperformed the contract by as much as anybody I've ever seen in athletics. I mean, I was trying to think of a comparison of somebody, maybe Drew Brees on his initial Saints, on what he signed in 2006, maybe the last couple of seasons, and what he was playing that first deal.
It's not even close. It's still not even close. You can't be making less than the backups. You can't be a 4-time All-Star.
He was the 122nd paid, highest paid player in the league.
That's what I'm saying.
That was his salary, was 122 in the league.
That's what I'm saying. And while I think MJ had so many nice things to say about Pippen, and really the most telling was the bottom line. He's like, look, Pippen's the greatest teammate I ever had. I never won a championship before him. I never won a championship after.
They never became stable until he got there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They were up and down, and Jordan had the foot injury in the second season. But one thing I will say,
but MJ, real quick though, I was gonna say MJ calling Pippen selfish, so that was a little interesting.
Yeah. When
they pair that with the graphic of MJ's making 33.1 a year and Pippen's making 2.9. What if Michael Jordan was making 2.9 at that point? Like, I mean, what would he have done to Jerry Krause? Do you think he was already bullying him just because?
Well, and look, that was another thing that came out with the way that they talked and disrespected Krause openly. You know what I mean? Like Jordan walking up to him as Krause is shoveling pills down his throat, and Jordan just says in front of the entire team and media, are those the pills that keep you short, or are those your diet pills? You know what I mean? Like, just kind of like, and then there was an episode of Pippen in the back of the bus talking to Krause and just kind of calling him out from the back. So things were bad.
It's tough to be that short and fat amongst those Giants, too.
I agree, man.
Mean, that's just like...
And have that personality where you want credit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And walk around like you deserve credit. But one thing that I will say that cut the legs out from Krause, I thought, in the argument that's going to make him the villain of this documentary, right? Because 2 hours in, he's the obvious bad guy. Right? Through the first 120 minutes of what we've seen. But to me, Reinsdorf kind of cuts that out when he says that he travels to Phil Jackson's Montana home in the offseason between 96 and 97 and gets the one-year deal done. Well, then at that point, is it Reinsdorf who's making the decisions and running the team, or is it Krause who's just kind of the face and being the bad guy? Because if Reinsdorf steps in and pays Phil Jackson and says, no, look, hold up. You guys put your differences to the side. It's my team. Here's what we're going to do. Here's a 1-year deal. It seems like Reinsdorf could have kept this thing together, because the fact that this dynasty and that this team was blown up over the ego.
Voluntarily.
Yes.
Like
After a championship is maddening.
How can you – it just seems so absurd in our current news cycle or how we cover teams. How could you win 5 of 7 championships and then sit there and tell the head coach, I don't care if you go 82-0 and win another championship, which they do end up doing, you are not going to be the coach next season. Like, I just to how we sit here and talk about sports and break it down every day, I cannot fathom it. It doesn't make any sense. And I cannot help but just try to sit here and imagine what in the world this team would have looked like being covered in today's 24/7 news cycle. It would have been relentless. It would have been nonstop.
Well, they were rock stars in the 90s. They were the Beatles. And really, because of Jordan, you had that one central figure. I mean, that trip to Paris in 97, October of 97 going in. I mean, he was John Lennon. He was Paul McCartney. He was a rock star.
On the slick, one of the best parts of last night's episode was the guy before the French talk show. The one guy asking for the autograph, and MJ kind of looks at his handler. He's like, "Hey, what is this guy doing?"
I thought we went over this.
And the French guy, he's like, "No, okay, come on."
But even the guy's like, kind of like, "What's the what?
He's like,
what's the problem? I mean, we're standing right here.
There's nothing to stand.
He's right here."
Like, no, come on now.
I thought the music was great.
Which apparently I don't know 90s rap that well, but that has been one of the big hits. Everybody loves hearing Rakim on there, and it does set the tone. That 90s style with the Jordan highlights is just fantastic.
And then the intro music taking you back to the Chicago United
How about their
Center.
warm-ups?
Microphone.
You didn't turn on your mic, Sammy.
It is. Hey, how about those warm-ups, the white warm-ups?
Oh, all the old
Insane.
styles. I mean,
And
I'm
his
just
beret.
I'm so nostalgic for it. It's and already the 90s are circling back around fashion-wise, and everybody loves those 90s aesthetics. And it's just, I mean, they were. Yeah, his Kangol, his beret, that hoop earring on the left ear, the long baggy suits, like everything about Michael Jordan just drip.
What about the trip to Boston? In what was that, 87?
When they went
86?
30 and 52 and made the playoffs.
I mean, to give you an idea of the tension between Jordan and the front office, it doesn't start. It doesn't begin in the late 90s. It does a great job in the early part of the documentary in going back and looking to the disconnect between Krause, Reinsdorf, and Jordan when he's in that second season of the foot injury. In that offseason, after he misses so many games, somehow he convinces those guys to allow him to go back to Chapel Hill to North Carolina, where he ends up playing 1-on-1, 2-on-2,
No, he didn't convince him.
3-on-3.
He just did it secretly.
No, he convinced them to let them go back and rehab there. He didn't tell them what he was doing in Chapel Hill when he was over there playing 5-on-5 basketball, and he had his foot ready to go. When he gets back to Chicago, they have him on this strict 7-minute per half time.
If you're a Pelicans fan, I mean, you can relate,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Zion this last year. Now, imagine that, though, later in his career when you're in the midst of a playoff run. Like, people were already mad about a random Zion game that they made him sit out in the fourth quarter. People would be losing their mind if they did what they did with MJ.
So he hits the 14-minute mark at one of these road trips at Indiana late in the season with a playoff berth on the line.
Yeah.
If they win the game, they make the playoffs. There's 30 seconds left in the game, and the head coach gets a message from up top from Krause and the executives, do not play Michael Jordan one more second or you're fired.
It's so crazy.
Right?
To think about
Like,
it.
listen to this. This is nuts. I mean, this is an NBA general manager and owner with a playoff berth on the line telling the coach, don't play our best player. We want to be in the lottery. And somehow John Paxson, a slow white dude, hits a game winner in Indiana, pushes Chicago over the top, gets him a playoff berth, and that sets up the trip to Boston.
Yeah.
That sets up the epic trips to the Boston Garden. I didn't know about game one. I knew about game two.
Yeah.
I didn't know he had 49 in game one.
Yeah.
In game two, him him and Danny Ainge play golf in between.
Okay.
Do you hear the story?
What, yes,
Did you hear the story last
what
night?
is the book Rare Air, and how did that author get in that
How
golf
was he
group?
on that golf game?
That's what I'm saying.
Who is
dude.
that guy?
I don't know. I'm going to
Like,
look it up right now
that
again.
dude had a great seat because he's got all the stories, man.
Yeah, he got to go golfing with Ainge and Jordan
On a day off?
before the playoffs. Mark Vansel. Shout out to you, Mark Vansel. You got in Michael's inner circle.